Molt check. 1, 2.
If it's broke around here, we fix it. I can take y'all where you need to go, down to my hood, back in them woods. We do it different round here, that's right, but we sure do it good, and we do it all night. So if you really want to know how it feels to get off the road, trucks and four wheels, jump on in, and man, tell your friends, we'll raise some hell with a blacktop in. Chilling on the dirt road, laid back.
Molt check. Tim Larson, Molt check. Tim Larson, come in, Molt check. Molt check, 1, 2, 3, 4. Tim Larson, you good?
It's got me reminiscing on them good times. I'm turning off a real life driving, that's right. I'm hitting easy street on mud tires. That's right. Yeah, I'm chilling on a dirt road, laid back swerving like I'm George Jones. Smoke rolling out the window, and ice cold beer sitting in the console. Memory laid up in the headlights. It's got me reminiscing on them good times. I'm turning off a real life driving, that's right. I'm hitting easy street on mud tires. That's right.
Baby, you a song, you make me wanna roll my windows down and cruise. Hey, baby. Yeah, when I first saw that bikini top on her, she's popping right out of the South Georgia water. Thought, oh, good Lord, she had them long tan legs, couldn't help myself, so I walked up and said, well, baby, you a song, you make me wanna roll my windows.
Test 1, 2, 3, 4. Perfect.
You think so? Can you hear that? Did you hear that? Hi, everyone. My name is Hillary Seeger, and I'm going to get dizzy spinning around doing this. I'd like to welcome you all here. A lot of you I know. Some of you I've met recently. Some of you I've known since a long time ago. And it's just great to welcome you all here to greet our presidential candidate, my presidential candidate of choice, Christie. I would like to start this off by introducing Sienna Zarek to lead us in, she's going to actually sing the national anthem for us. Sienna?
Oh, sir, can you see by the dawn's early proudly we hailed, and the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars
Thank you, Sienna. Thank you so much. And while we're all still standing, I'm going to ask my good friend, Executive Counselor and Marine Lieutenant Colonel Joe Kenny to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, thank you, Joe. So, how many of you all out here? So, Governor, as you walked in, I was just getting how many of these folks were veterans. And of them here, I know a lot of them. Of the veterans in the audience, the ones that I know, and on behalf of myself and my children, I would like to thank you for everything that you're trying to do for us. But I'm going to turn this program over to Joe Kenny right now.
Good to see everybody here at the Interlakes High School in Meredith. Before we introduce our guest speaker, I just want to thank Governor Christie for really embracing the New Hampshire primary process. By going to the coffee shops, by going to the town halls, by going to the back rooms and really getting to know voters here in New Hampshire. He has done it in true fashion. He's done it the New Hampshire way. And a few weeks ago, he said, okay, New Hampshire, I know you've got it down to 3 choices, but really, I need you to get it down to 1 choice, but yet, better yet, I need you to get it down to 1 choice. And so he's here tonight to get your 1 choice, so you'll get it down to 1 choice, and then hopefully that you'll be his choice. And so, just briefly, Governor Christie is someone who supports our military. He wants to strengthen our military, our intelligence community, is someone more tele-governors in the United States together, is someone who's really taken on the challenges of his state and leader, by someone who has taken on natural disasters when the country and when the state call for him to provide leadership, and for someone who truly embraces leadership here in the country. And it's no mistake, when you think about it, when he was the head of the Governors Association, they picked Chris Christie, and there was a reason for that, because he is a generation of his peers has risen to the top, and they recognize that he is a true leader and is someone who's going to work hard for this nation. So with that, please give a warm welcome to Governor Chris Christie, running for President of the United States. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all for being here. Happy to be back, and appreciate, Joe, your introduction and your friendship. Sienna had to go because she's got homework tonight, so I heard you all saw her and got to hear from her. I thank you. Hillary, thank you for your friendship and your support. And my friend Jeb Bradley, who is here, who is, I have to tell you, has done extraordinary work getting the legislature pointed in the right direction on the heroin addiction issue. Jeb, thanks for your leadership. There's families all across New Hampshire who are going to be able to bring family members home because you have done the work that you're doing in the legislature. So thank you, Jeb, for doing that. So, 19 days to go till you all have to vote. Here's the good news about that. In 19 days, we will get out of your hair. All right? And you know, I think you'll see us back here in the fall campaigning hard for the general election victory, because New Hampshire is going to be an incredibly important state, not only in February, but in November, in selecting the next president of the United States. So we'll give you a little time off from us while we go and we campaign in some of these other states around the country. But I've really enjoyed, as Joe mentioned in his introduction, I've really enjoyed the last 9 months being up here and getting to know all of you. It's been an incredible journey so far, and it's hardly over. But why is it so important? And why are you so important in this process? It's because you get to do this. When we leave here on February 9th, we'll do a little bit more of this in South Carolina. But then after that, it starts to be, let's say on March 1st, I think there's 11 states in one day. March 8th, there's another multiple of states in one day, and it continues, multiples of states in all the Tuesdays after that, and a few Saturdays thrown in there. We're not going to get the chance, for the most part, in other states to do this, to gather in a school with a group of interested citizens, some of whom have made up their minds, some of whom haven't, and to get to talk to you and get you to hear from us in response to your questions. It's an incredibly important tool. I've used it in New Jersey for my whole term, which is 6 years now. I've done 134 town hall meetings in New Jersey as governor, not counting campaigns. This is as governor in non-campaign years, 134 town hall meetings. And the reason I've done it is because it keeps me in touch with the people I'm working for. It can be a pretty isolating life otherwise. And what happens when you get isolated? When you get isolated, you forget what your job is and who you're working for. And that's what's happened in Washington. Those folks down in Washington have completely forgotten, and I mean both parties, have completely forgotten who they're working for and that they're supposed to be down there doing a job. And I think what we need more than anything else down in Washington, D.C. in the White House is a disruptor, is somebody who's going to disrupt what's going on down there, who's going to take the status quo and turn it upside down, and knows how then to rebuild it after you do that. See, it's not going to matter if you send somebody down there who just will light the place on fire and burn it down. Okay? It probably merits that. But you got to build something after. We have to have a national defense. We have to have homeland security. We have to make sure that we're doing the things that need to be done to help cure and treat disease in this country. We have to make sure that we're doing things to make sure that our infrastructure is built. There are lots of things that government has to do. We can't just burn down the government and just leave it down there in ashes, as much as some days we might like to do it because of how frustrated we are with them. So I know how to disrupt, and I know how to build. And New Jersey is the example of that. When I got there, we had an $11 billion deficit and a $29 billion budget. And that was after having raised taxes 115 times in the 8 years before I became governor. At the state level, think about that. 115 tax and fee increases in 8 years. And they still had an $11 billion deficit. That's because spending went up 56% in those 8 years. So we got left an awful mess. And I'll tell you just one story about my approach. When I got there, I declared a fiscal emergency, which gave me powers under a statute called the Disaster Relief Act. If you declare a disaster, and we had an economic disaster going on, the governor has much broader powers. And so what I did, because the legislature came to me and said, we have to raise taxes again, Governor, we have this big deficit. The state treasurer came to me and said, if we don't do something by March, we won't be able to meet payroll. Think about that. New Jersey, the second wealthiest state per capita in the nation, was not going to meet payroll for the second pay period in March. I got in there for the second pay period in January. And so they told me how to raise taxes. So I declared the economic emergency, and I went in and spent the next 4 weeks, 3 days a week, going through the budget line by line. And we cut 800 programs out of the budget right then, in the middle of the fiscal year. And then I asked the legislature if I could give a speech to them on the fiscal emergency. They said, sure. And so they said, we'd like to have a copy of the speech beforehand. I go, oh, no, I don't. Give copies of the speech beforehand because then you won't show up. They go, no, we'll show up. We'd love to see what you're going to say. I said, I'm sure you would, so show up. I said, listen. They pushed me a little bit more, and I said to one of the leaders in the legislature, I said, listen, I'm not Wayne Newton, and this ain't Vegas. Okay, we do one show a night. That's it. All right, and you show up at that, and we'll show you what we're going to do. So I went into the legislature to give the speech without giving them any advance notice of what I was going to say. Basically, what I said to them was, now, it was a 35-minute speech. I'll boil it down to 35 seconds, which may be what I should have done in the first place. But I said, listen, you saddled me and the people of New Jersey with this problem. I just cut 800 programs to balance the budget without tax increases. I fixed your problem. You can thank me later. See you. Goodbye. And I walked out. And the place went crazy, as you can imagine. Okay, it's the Democratic legislature. And I laid out in detail for them the programs I was cutting and the spending I was cutting, and that I was doing it without their permission. I said, you appropriated it, but this is now a disaster. I've declared it a disaster, and I'm going to do it without your permission. And so there was all kinds of quotes, as you can imagine, on the floor of the legislature after that. The Senate president said, I don't know who this guy thinks he is. And a lot of people that I admired, Julius Caesar, Napoleon Bonaparte, all these great leaders of the past, right? He called me all these names. And then, ironically, the next day, he and I pulled up to the State House together, where our parking spots are right near each other. And I got out of the car, and I saw him, and I said, hey, Steve, I read those things in the paper you said about me today, and I got to tell you, I've had second thoughts. I feel badly. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go upstairs. I'm going to rescind the executive order. I'm going to put all the spending back. I'm going to send it down the hall and let you guys decide. And he looked at me, and this will tell you everything you need to know about politics, both in Trenton, New Jersey, and Washington, D.C. Do this, Rich. He came up to me, and he put his arm around me, and he said, Chris, don't overreact. We went ahead with my plan. And that's what you needed to disrupt. I told them that, they told me they were going to close down the government if I didn't raise taxes. They had done that to my predecessor. He's a Democrat. He wanted to raise taxes a point. They wanted to raise taxes 1.5 points, and they closed down the government over that, over a disagreement of 0.5 point in a tax increase. And he, very famously at the time, said that he was going to move a cot into his office at the State House and sleep there until the crisis was over. So now, having known that he did that and they closed the government anyway and all the rest, I called them all in when they threatened to close the government. I said, listen, folks, I'm not signing a tax increase. People in New Jersey have had enough. And here's another thing. I'm not moving a cot in here to sleep here when you close the government. I mean, look at me. What cot am I going to sleep in? Telling you, I'm not doing it, right? So I told him, here's what I will do, though. If you close the government, I said, I'll get in the black SUVs with the troopers. I'll go back to the governor's mansion. I'll go upstairs. I'll order a pizza. I'll open a beer, and I'll watch the Mets. And you guys can keep the government closed. And when you finally reopen it, just call me. And I'll come back to work. But if you think you're going to blackmail me and the people of New Jersey, you're crazy. So they didn't do it. They didn't close the government. And guess what else didn't happen? We didn't raise taxes. And we haven't raised taxes once for 6 years because they understand that I won't do it. You need to disrupt. You need to disrupt their normal pattern of behavior. And man, do we need disruption in Washington. We need that. We need a president who's going to stand up like I've stood up for the last 6 years and vetoed more tax increases than any governor in American history. I got to thank my liberal legislature for sending me all those tax increases, or I couldn't have vetoed them. But I vetoed them nonetheless. And then as governor, you need to know how to bring people together. So after all that fighting in the beginning, we came together, we capped property taxes in a bipartisan way. We came together, we reformed teacher tenure. We reformed the pension and benefit system. We balanced 6 budgets in a row without any new tax increases. And all of those were with Democrat and Republican votes, because you couldn't do it otherwise. There's Democratic majorities. I had to do it. Disruption and progress at the same time. That's what we need in Washington, D.C., everybody. We don't need someone who's just going to go down and burn the building down, doesn't have the first idea of how to rebuild it. And we don't need someone who won't take the steps to disrupt the system because they're part of the status quo. We need someone who can do both. And I suggest to you that only a governor can do that, because only a governor has the experience to do it, and a governor in a blue state with a Democratic legislature. Because, man, I'd give my right arm to have a Republican legislature for a week. We'd never sleep. I guarantee you, for a week. Just give me a week. All the things we would do would be incredible. If I had Jeb Bradley and Dick Hinch and those guys, we moved them down to New Jersey for a week. It'd only be a week, Jeb. Don't worry, you come right back. just for a week, we'd have an amazing time. We'd have a much better state. But we don't. And we're not going to change Washington that way. Because you get to elect who you send down there. I don't. And I got to deal with them. And I'll do that. And the last thing I'll tell you is this. This is too dangerous a world. Much too dangerous a world to have our next president be like the last one. He's got on-the-job training. Okay? And that's whether it's Hillary Clinton, who's never run a thing in her life other than her Senate staff of 30 people, and the State Department, which didn't go all that well for the 4 years she did it. And it means the same thing if it's Marco Rubio or Ted Cruz, everybody. Because first-term senators don't have the first idea of how to run the most complex government the world's ever known. I'm sorry, they're good guys, but they've never run a thing in their lives other than their Senate staffs. Think about it. There's 30 people on a Senate staff. So you're going to take somebody who the only thing they've ever had to run or make decisions on in their life is a 30-person operation, and then you're going to put them in charge of the most complex government the world's ever known. We did that already 7 years ago. Put aside philosophy for a second. Of course we agree with Ted and Marco more than we agree with President Obama, much more. But that doesn't matter. As much as what matters is how are you going to run it when you get there. There's no owner's manual in the top center desk drawer of the Oval Office. You can't learn this on the job. And that's why if you think about the greatest governors we've had in the last century, greatest presidents we had in the last century, they've been governors. No matter what your political philosophy is. Ronald Reagan, Franklin Roosevelt, Theodore Roosevelt, the presidents who have gotten the very best in the last century when the government has gotten very large. Before the last century, the government was smaller, it was easier. But now, it is a huge enterprise. You need someone who's done this before. So, listen, this campaign's been very entertaining. I've been entertained being part of it. I mean, think about it. We've had governors and former governors, senators and former senators, business folks, and a character. We've had it all right? And it's been fun. It's been entertaining to watch and fun to participate in. And I'm sure you've gotten a number of laughs sitting on your couch, watching the debates, watching some of the things that have been said on TV commercials or in interviews. I'm sure your mouth has been hanging open at more than one time. What? They just said, what? Who? Right? I know. This has happened. And that's fine. And I have no problem with you being entertained because I've liked being entertained too. But now it's 19 days to Election Day. And we're not electing an entertainer-in-chief. We're electing a commander-in-chief. A commander-in-chief in a really dangerous time in our country's history. When terrorism is rearing its head again, where people are being murdered by ISIS terrorists all over the globe, including here in the United States, where Christians are being beheaded in the Middle East purely because of their religious beliefs, where North Korea is testing nuclear weapons, and Iran is testing ballistic missiles, and we have the smallest army we've had since 1940 and the smallest navy we've had since World War I. And you wonder why the world's a more dangerous place for America and Americans. We need someone ready on day one to take on these fights. And so, you know, I've been entertained too. But showtime is over, everybody. It's game time. Showtime is when you want to be entertained. Game time is when you want a winner who can get the job done for you. You want to put a winner out on the field to be able to get this job done, and that's who I want to be for you. Is the person who goes down there and makes this government work again like I made the government in New Jersey work. And to make you feel once again like the presidency can work and that the president is working for you. That's what we need to do. And that's what I'm going to work hard to try to convince you of in the next 19 days. And what I'm going to try to do once I get to the White House in January of next year. And by the way, I want to congratulate everybody. We are now under 1 year until Barack Obama leaves office. So that's a good thing. It's a really good thing. So now we get to the fun part of the program. You get to ask me questions, I get to answer. Okay? It's really simple. In New Hampshire, I only have one rule for town hall meetings. In New Jersey, I have 4. That'll tell you everything you need to know about New Hampshire and New Jersey. So the one rule is just raise your hand, and I'll call on you, and I'll answer your question. And let me tell you, I guarantee you something as you walk out of here tonight. You may not agree with every answer I give, but you will not walk out of here wondering what I think. You will not walk out of here going, I wonder who wrote that for him. You will not walk out of here looking for me to grab some piece of paper to read off of it what someone told me I should say in response to a certain question. And you will not be confused. You may not be thrilled at every answer. Hope you are, but you may not be. But you will not be confused. You will know where I stand and what I believe, and you'll know what kind of president I intend to be. So I'm going to take my jacket off. I'm going to hang it up on this thing, because usually Mary Pat is here. She's not coming till tonight, and she's always been wonderful about taking my jacket, and I want to tell you why. Right? Here's why she's been wonderful about doing that. Right in the beginning, when we came here for one of our first visits to New Hampshire as candidate, we were standing in the lobby of a hotel that we were staying in here in New Hampshire, and the manager of the hotel recognized me, and he came over and he thanked me for staying at his hotel and said, hope I see a lot more of you in the future, et cetera. And we had a nice little conversation. And while I was doing that, Mary Pat walked off to go get a cup of coffee at the shop there to start her day. And so he walked away, and I stood there waiting for Mary Pat to come back with her coffee. And the manager came back over, and he said, and by the way, I want to tell you something. I really think you'll learn a lot about somebody by watching them and what you're doing right now. And I said, really? How so? And he said, you didn't just walk to the car. He said, you stayed here to wait for your young staffer to get her coffee. And I have to tell you, I think that's really great, Governor. And I said, knowing how rumors get started in presidential campaigns, I was like, the woman I came down from my hotel room with is not my young staffer. That was my wife. And so he said, oh, I'm sorry, Governor. I said, oh, that's definitely my wife. Mary Pat loves when I tell that story because she gets referred to as the young staffer. And so our deal's always been, I refer to her as the young staffer and tell that story, and then she'll hold my coat. But she's not going to be up here for a while. So we've got this microphone stand, which is not nearly as attractive as my wife, but it'll serve the purpose of holding my coat tonight. So raise them up, and let's go to work and answer some questions. Who's got questions? I'll start with you right there, sir, and they'll bring you a microphone so everyone can hear you. There you go.
Does it have an? Thank you so much for coming. I enjoyed your talk with us today, and you certainly got our attention back during Hurricane Sandy when your comment, which has been quoted in my house a number of times, was, "Get the hell off the beach."
Yeah, subtle, right?
So take that to Washington with you.
Yes, sir. Absolutely will. Well, thank you. And I will tell you, I think that that's the style of leadership that I'll bring to the presidency. Is I'm going to be direct and I'm going to be honest. And you know what precipitated that comment? I don't know if you hold the story behind it, but the story behind it is that the hurricane was coming, and I had told everyone to evacuate from South Jersey. And then I was in the Emergency Operations Center. We were about 36 hours away from the hurricane hitting. And there was one of the news organizations that was doing a stand-up on the boardwalk in Asbury Park, New Jersey. And so I looked behind the reporter, and there were two young people on the beach. And he was putting sunscreen on her. And I'm watching this like, there's a hurricane in 36 hours. What are these people doing? And I started to get more and more angry. I was like, come on. I can't believe I told them to stop and to get out. The hurricane's coming, and here they are. And I said, I can't. I started to get really angry in the room, and I said, I can't believe these people. And I could see my poor communications director, because I was just headed down to a press conference when I saw this. And I think she knew, like, uh-oh. I know what's going to happen now. And someone asked me about it, and I said, listen, I got a message for everybody in Asbury Park and up down the Jersey Shore. Get the hell off the beach. You've maximized your suntan. The day is over. Get off, and let's get to work and get off of there so you don't get killed. So that's what precipitated it, was those two young people on the beach in Asbury Park who were putting sunscreen on each other. Yes, sir, right back there.
Maybe you can hear me without the mic.
I can hear you without the mic. That's a great voice, isn't it? Don't give that guy a mic, for God's sake.
Thank you for your respect in coming to New Hampshire and campaigning. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'd like to pretend that we have the power to give you that first week in office. And I'll give you the legislature that you need as well. What's the first three things you would do? Because I think this country is looking for this.
Sure. And I encourage all of you to go to my website, to go to chrischristie.com. We have more detailed policy proposals in there than any other campaign. And so if you want to read all that detail, it's all there for you. Or if you're just having trouble getting to sleep, we can help you there too. First three things. First thing I would do is to absolutely revoke all of the illegal and unconstitutional executive orders that this president has put into place. I would do that first. Secondly, I would send to Capitol Hill my proposal for tax reform and regulatory reform so we can start building jobs again in this country, get the government off your back and out of your pocket, simplify the tax code to say 2 deductions, that's all that's left for individuals, home mortgage interest deduction and charitable contribution deduction. All the rest of them are gone. And it's because the American people believe, and they're right, that the tax system is rigged for the rich. And it is. All these special loopholes and deductions that get put in there by a lobbyist or a special interest group on behalf of the wealthy, and they're the ones who use most of those. If we did that, we could lower the rates down to 8% on the low end and 28% on the high end, and you could do your taxes in 15 minutes. And on the regulatory side, sign my first executive order, which would be to freeze any new regulation from any department or agency of the federal government for 180 days. I did that for 90 days in New Jersey. We need at least 180 days for the federal government. And then send my vice president out, as I sent my lieutenant governor out in New Jersey, to meet with businesses and bring Democrats with her. That's what my lieutenant governor did, and whoever my vice president is, I'd ask them to bring Democrats as well. Have open meetings and have those business people come and say, here's a list of regulations that cost me a fortune, drive me crazy, and don't do anything to make my business better or safer. Can you get rid of them? What we did in New Jersey was, after gathering all those, at the end of the first year, we got rid of 1/3 of all the regulations that my predecessor had put in place. So that would be step 2 to help jobs grow. Step 3 would be I would call all of our major allies, President of Mexico, Prime Minister of Canada, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, the Chancellor of Germany, the President of France, and the Prime Minister of Israel. And I would invite each of them over in the first 100 days individually to come over and meet with me in Camp David. And the first hour, and maybe 2 hours for Netanyahu, but the first hour for everybody else would be to vent about the way they've been treated the last 8 years by this president. And after that, it would be for me to ask them what's their vision of the world for the next 4 years. What do they want to achieve, and what are they willing to invest in that achievement? And then I tell them what my vision is for our country in the next 4 years. And hopefully we'd walk out of every one of those meetings with a coordinated plan of how we were going to work together. Because America cannot carry the burden of the world by itself. We need to bring our allies with us, but the only way we're going to do that is if we empower them. And you empower them by listening to them and taking their ideas into account, and then providing American leadership. Because in the end, American leadership is both a burden and an opportunity, but it's not a choice. Because we see the world right now and what it looks like without American leadership. And you've got Libya on fire, Iraq on fire, Syria in a mess, Egypt under martial law. And that's just the Middle East. That's not counting what's going on with nuclear tests in North Korea, missile tests in Iran, Russia in Ukraine and Crimea, and Syria. And the world is turned upside down, and then add to it ISIS and Al-Qaeda, which is now reconstituting and rebuilding training camps in Afghanistan. And there's a lot to work on, and we cannot do it by ourselves. And so those are the first 3 things that I would do. And I think that would help to get us into a right track and a right mindset for all the big problems that we have to deal with and the great opportunities that we can take advantage of in this country. Yes, sir, right there.
I don't have his voice.
No, I don't think anybody else does in this room.
Governor, my name is Ray Verco. My wife, Kay, is here tonight, and we're here because we're concerned about the future of our country. We're concerned about the future for our grandchildren. Now, we've lived the American dream. Back in the 60s, I served 3 tours of duty with the Navy as a Seabee. Last tour of duty was Vietnam, came home, wasn't a pretty picture. But we came to the Lakes region, and we started a construction business. With hard work and perseverance, we did okay. But the future of our country doesn't look that great right now. Now, our two states have something in common, New Jersey and New Hampshire. Don't you think we need something new in Washington?
Yes, sir.
Something new that will work and be a man, a person, a president that will do what he says he will do. It seems like our economy is shot. All our jobs and manufacturing's in China. Everything's made in China.
Yeah,
Can you bring it back?
Including all Donald Trump's ties and shirts, apparently.
But along with being a commander-in-chief to keep our country safe, we need an American president. American president. We need one.
Yep.
We hope you're the man.
Well, I do too. And let me tell you, I think you've put your finger on the most important part of all of what you just said, is that we need a president who says what he means and means what he says. That's hurt us around the world. The president said he was going to intervene in Syria if Assad used chemical weapons on his people. He used those chemical weapons and killed 250,000 of his people, and the president did nothing. The word of the American president has to mean something, not only abroad to our adversaries, but to our allies too. And at home, it has to mean something. To our political leaders here, they have to know they can't push the president around. The president will always keep his ears open and work and negotiate and compromise where necessary, and that's what I've done in New Jersey. But they also know the limits of my patience. And both things are really important to know. And so the last thing I'd say to you is, I liked again that you said we need an American president. Because I think the connotation of what you're saying is that we need a president who's going to put America's interests first. That we need to start thinking about, first and foremost, the most important job a president has is to protect the safety and security of the American people. And right now, the American people are nervous, and rightfully nervous, about their own safety and security, and the safety and security of your children and your grandchildren. If we don't get that right, we can't get to anything else. Whatever we do on the economy, whatever we do on education, whatever we do on healthcare, any of those things, you're not going to worry about one of those things if you're worried about the fact that we're going to be attacked. And if you don't believe me, remember the days after September 11th. No airlines flying in this country. Stock exchange closed. No sports going on, professional, youth, or amateur sports. Everything that makes the heartbeat of this country go stopped. And it stopped because we were scared. And when we're scared, we huddle close to the people that we love and cherish the most, and we try to keep them safe. And you know why? Because at that moment, we didn't know whether the government could provide for our safety or not. We should never be in that position again, yet here we are again. 14 years later, we're in the same position. We're wondering, can the American government really protect us and keep us safe? We need to have a president who understands that that's your first job. And that everything else that I said in response to his answer is important, but the assumption there is that I'm taking care of the other thing, that I'm taking care of national security and our homeland security. Because if you don't take care of that, then you're a failure as a president, no matter what else you do or try to do. And so that's the kind of president that I'm going to try to be. And I appreciate you both being here tonight very much. This man right here. I got a micro. No, this lady right here.
I would just like to know what's your plans for the border and illegal immigrants?
Sure. We have 5 points on illegal immigration and the border. I'll give you the overarching principle. The overarching principle is enforce the law. And you'll hear me say that over and over again tonight in a lot of responses to a lot of questions. I'm an old prosecutor. I believe in the rule of law. I believe in the rule of law over the rule of men and women. The rule of law is what equalizes this country. The rule of law is what makes us different than almost any other nation in the world, because we say that the law has to apply equally to everyone. Over the Supreme Court building, it says equal justice under the law. That's the principle that Americans have lived under that make us feel like everyone in this country, if you come here and you work hard and you have a great idea, has a fair shot. So we enforce the law. How do we do it? 5 ways. First, along the border, I would put walling or fencing in the most populated areas along the border, places where there are the most people, to try to deter some of that activity coming across the border. I want to be clear, I am not a guy who's for a wall along the entire border. It's too expensive, it makes no sense, and it sends the wrong signal. And I can tell you this, I've met President Peña Nieto, the president of Mexico, okay? I had an economic trade mission with him in Mexico City, and I met with him in the United States when he was here on vacation. And he's a very nice guy, but he's not paying for the wall. I don't care. I'm telling you right now, I don't care who asks him, how they ask. I don't care how beautiful the wall's going to be. It'll be built beautifully. It'll be a beautiful wall. It'll be an unbelievable, beautiful wall, right? With a big door, which will let the good people come back in through, right? I don't care. He's not paying for it, all right? You're paying for it. You're paying for it, and it's wrong for you to have to pay for that. It doesn't make sense. Number two, we need to use the electronic technology we have, drones with cameras and stationary cameras in the more remote parts of the border, to be able to monitor those with cameras and on screens. So if there's activity going on there, we can deploy forces there. But no reason in the more remote parts of the border to have people there the whole time. Too expensive and doesn't make any sense in terms of getting things done. Third, I would tell you we need to embed FBI, DEA, and ATF agents in with our Border Patrol to interdict the drugs and the guns that come from the south border. The FBI, DEA, and ATF are the best trained people, nothing against our Border Patrol folks, but they're the best trained people to interdict criminal activity. So we need to have them help our Border Patrol agents, so we should put more of them down there. Fourth, I said this back in New Hampshire back in the summer and got a lot of attention for it. I said, if Federal Express can track a package from the minute it leaves your front door till it gets to the front door where you're supposed to send the package to, and every spot along the way, right? You go on the internet, you put the little number in, and it's like, it's in the truck, it's headed to the airport, it's in the processing center, it's out of the processing center, it's being loaded on the plane, it's off the plane, and it's back in the processing center. Like, I don't understand, like, who cares? But nonetheless, we can do it. Then why can't we track people who come in here on visas? Makes no sense. Administration said a couple weeks ago, we have 120,000 people in this country on revoked visas, and we don't know where they are. What a comforting thought. Why give them visas in the first place? Why just let everybody in? So here's what I think you have to do. The press said at the time, they asked me on CNN, do you want to put chips in people when they walk in? I'm like, no. Do you want to put barcodes on their foreheads? No. No, I don't want to do that because we don't need to. We already have barcodes. They're right there. Everybody's got their own individual, unique fingerprint. And everybody who comes in here on a visa, tourist visa, student visa, work visa, should have to give their fingerprints. It should go into a national database. And then when that person wants to secure services in this country, rent a car, rent a hotel room, rent an apartment, buy things, they should have to give their fingerprint if they're here on a visa. And if that fingerprint matches up on the database that the person's overstayed, law enforcement gets called and they get taken away. Because here's the thing, we want them to come here, but stay here for as long as you're invited. It would be like if you invited me for Christmas dinner. And then you went up to your guest room today and I was still there, right? You wanted me for Christmas dinner, but you didn't want me for a month, right? You're like, listen, Governor, great to meet you. Get out, man. Get out. It's the same thing with these folks. So we need to have that system because remember, 40% of the 11 million people who are here illegally are here on overstays of visas, not coming over the southern border, but an overstay of a visa. We invited them in and we never invited them out. We need to do both. Fifth and final, here's one of the big problems. Folks come here to work and people are employing them when they're not supposed to. We need to require that every employer in this country uses E-Verify. And if, despite that, they hire someone who's here illegally, they get fined double whatever they made off the person. That'll get their attention. Because the only reason they're hiring these folks in the main is because they can get cheaper labor and make more money. I'm not against companies making money. I just want them to do it legally. That's all. Take those 5 steps, and we're enforcing the law. We're slowing down or stopping the flow from the southern border. We're controlling what comes in by visa so we won't add to those numbers. And a lot of the people who are here already and can't get work, they're going to leave. But until we do those things, we should not be asking you for any more permission to do anything else on immigration until we do what we were supposed to be doing for a long time. If we prove we can do that and then we have some more ideas on immigration, then we can come back to you and talk to you about it. But until that time, You should be from Missouri, not New Hampshire. Show me. Show me. Show me you can actually enforce the law, and then we'll talk about whatever else we do on immigration, but nothing other than that. That'd be the 5 steps I would take. All right. Sir, you were going to get the microphone. I don't want to short you there.
Thank you, Governor.
Sure.
I think I got to have that guy over there.
You're pretty good.
Anyway, with the attacks in Paris and then again in San Bernardino, both related to ISIS, I'm curious as to why we haven't invoked Article 5 of the NATO doctrine to bring a coalition together to fight this problem. And I was just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Listen, I think the attack in Paris, and I said this at the time, France could very well have invoked Article 5. I think it was absolutely an attack on them as a NATO member. An attack on one is an attack on all. I think the next president has to bring everybody together in NATO. Maybe you have to invoke Article 5, but maybe not. Maybe bring everybody together and get everybody to an agreement that without the invocation of the article, which would have all kinds of diplomatic implications to it, to say we're going to work together. Because you now know you're all being threatened. It's not just us, it's all of you. But you got to, as the president, that's why I said one of my first 3 things in response to his question would be to bring those allies here, those key allies. Because they need to hear from the president that that's what I want. And that I'm willing to invest American effort in that, but only if they invest British effort, French effort, German effort, Mexican effort, Canadian effort. They need to all be working with us. And so I think if you have to invoke Article 5, you could, and I wouldn't object to it. But I would hope that what the next president could do is use his credibility and his charm and good looks, if it's me, to be able to bring people around. And that's what we need to do, because this fight cannot be America's fight alone. It has to be a worldwide fight for it to be successful, both from a military perspective and because of the politics of it. You know, we don't want ISIS to say this is the big bad United States against them. We want to unite the world against them. Then they have much lesser of an argument to recruit more people and to make them more violent. So that's the way I would go about it. You got a follow-up?
When all these countries signed that document to be a part of NATO, they agreed that if a country invokes Article 5, that we're all in.
Yep.
And otherwise, NATO is a toothless tiger.
You're exactly right. And so my point to you is that you can either get that from the invoking of Article 5 or you can get it by the persuasion of bringing people around without invoking. In the end, I don't think it matters all that much, but I think it would be important for the next president to be able to show that he can unify the world in that way without the invoking of the legal document, but to say my ability to persuade on this argument and their sense of concern about themselves would bring them to that point. That's what I'd prefer to do, but I wouldn't hesitate, given further attacks, to invoke Article 5 either, especially if those attacks were against the U.S., which would give us the right to invoke. And certainly San Bernardino probably gives us the right to invoke.
Governor Christie, my kind of tail ends on that.
No, I'm going to call on people. Like, you see, there's only one rule. There's only one rule. Like, you raise your hand, I call on you. We don't, listen, here's why I don't do yelled out questions. It's not because I'm the governor of New Jersey, and it's not because I'm running for president. It's because I am the father of 4. Right? And I am coming off of Christmas vacation, which I now have 2 children away at college, 2 children at home. Now, the 2 children at home believe they now own the house, right? They've expanded their missions. They've expanded the property that they occupy in the house, right? And then all of a sudden at Christmas time, the 2 older ones who used to think they own the house come back and start to act like they're still running the show. And the 2 little ones go, hold on, we're running the show, you left. And then the fights start. So you got to ignore it, right? You hear all the yelling, you just got to ignore it because you can't just go yell at each other someplace else. So Mary Pat and I have a finely tuned ability now in this time after Christmas vacation to ignore things that are yelled out at us. It's because we have that parental tuning in our ear after 4 kids coming back for vacation for Christmas and not knowing how to get along with each other. So I will try to get to as many people as I can tonight, but I was about to point to this lady who had her hand up And we'll keep going to people who have their hand up, and we'll do the best we can with it. So give this to this lady right here.
All right, Governor, thank you for coming here tonight. Now everyone in the room knows you, but you don't know all of us.
True as that.
So my name is Holly Tatro, and I'm a United States Navy Blue Star mother. I'm not actually here to ask you a question tonight. I'm here to lay down a challenge to you. You see, in Bill Clinton's second administration, by the wave of a pen and a magical executive order, he changed the terminology from POW MIA to duty status whereabouts unknown, Dustwin. He did this because it was more media friendly. He didn't really realize what he had done. And in actuality, what he had done was he changed the urgency of their status. He also put a lot of unnecessary and undue stress on the families back at home, especially families living in military housing. Now, since Bill Clinton left office, I've been to see almost every single presidential candidate, and I've asked them the same question. Will you be the candidate to change the terminology back and restore the urgency? Now, in light of the Boberg doll issue, it's more important now than ever that this terminology be restored. And as a mother, it's my job to protect my children. These men and women serving in the United States military are sons and daughters of this nation. Therefore, they are mere familia. So I'm here to challenge you, if elected, when elected, if in your first 100 days you will be the man who has the courage that no one else has, to be the commander-in-chief and stand up and protect these men and women serving in harm's way today.
Words matter. Words matter. And so you're damn right I'll change it, because words matter. They do. Thank you for raising it. Appreciate it very much. Yes, sir. I'll give you mine.
Governor, thank you for coming. Could you speak to sanctuary cities?
This goes back to, I told this lady right there that I was going to wind up saying enforce the law lots of times tonight. The problem with this administration, the single biggest problem with the Barack Obama administration, in my view, is lawlessness. Lawlessness. In every way that you can think of, right? Sanctuary cities is an example of that. Enforce the law. And don't just enforce the laws that you like or you agree with. When I took the oath of governor of New Jersey, I swore to enforce the laws of the state of New Jersey. I didn't get to say, I swear to enforce the laws of the state of New Jersey that I like. I didn't get to do that. I got to enforce all of them, even the ones I don't like. This president thinks that he only has to enforce the ones that he likes. And so he doesn't like the immigration laws. He wants to have sanctuary cities, so he looks the other way. I will not. That will end right in the beginning of the administration. A letter will go out to all of the mayors of the sanctuary cities to say this. You either start enforcing the law within an X period of time, and if you do not, we will move to cut off federal funding from your city because you're not helping to enforce the federal law. It's that simple. And the fact is that you see this in other places too. You see this with marijuana. President's allowing states to go ahead and legalize recreational use of marijuana while marijuana is illegal under federal law. What kind of signal does that send? The president decides he wants to do something different on gun control. So he just signs executive orders that have absolutely no force and effect by working through Congress. He decides to just make up new laws. It's lawlessness. And that's when the American people start to feel really at risk because they don't know what the rules of the game are anymore. The rules of the game are being made up by the President of the United States. So sanctuary cities, what I'd say to every mayor is, you take an oath the way I do. And your oath says for mayors not only to enforce the law of their city, but to enforce the law of the state and the United States. And they have an obligation to do it. They've taken an oath, they've sworn it on a Bible, and if they're not going to be unwilling to do it, then we're going to make them do it. Because enforcing the law is part of what my life has been about. It's what I believe, as I said before, brings equity of opportunity to people in this country, not by government picking winners and losers and who's good and who's bad and who I agree with or not, but to say the law is going to apply to all of you the same. And then the power of the individual is what will determine your success or failure. The greatness of your ideas, the depth of your work ethic, the nature of your character. That's what's made America the greatest country in the world right from our founding. And we're losing that with a president who does not enforce the law. I will, sanctuary cities, or all those other examples I just gave. And what I said to this lady's question, we will enforce the law. So, thank you, sir. Young man, we got a young person's question.
Thank you for calling on me. Well, I was wondering what you would do with the Iran deal of the nuclear bombs.
I like this kid. What's your name? Nice to meet you. All right. This Iran deal is the single worst thing the president has done in foreign policy in his time here, and here's why. Because Iran is a country that has no regard for human life. No regard for human life. They have engaged as the largest country to sponsor terrorism around the world for groups like Hezbollah and Hamas and others. They have been chanting for 36 years, death to America. They burn our flag. They stone women. They hang people because of their sexual orientation. This is a country that has no regard or respect for human life. You cannot allow that kind of country to possess the most dangerous weapons the world's ever known. And so as president, I would do three things right at the start. One, I'd tell Iran, you are never going to get a nuclear weapon on my watch, and even if I have to use military action to stop it, I will. Second, I'll tell them that we're not going to have another meeting, let alone another agreement, until you recognize Israel's right to exist. You don't have to be Israel's ally, but you must recognize their right to exist. And third, I'd tell the people inside Iran, you're being ruled by an illegitimate regime, and you should change it, because the people of Iran deserve better than what they're getting. So those are the things I would do on the Iran nuclear deal. We would make sure they never got nuclear weapons, because we could not trust them to have them. See, if you want to be a part of the civilized world, you must first be civilized, and they're not. And we need to say it out loud and repeat it, and not be ashamed of it, not apologize for the fact that we're not trying to impose our views on them. They're trying to impose their religion upon us. And I want everybody in this country to be able to practice whatever religion it is they want to practice, and however they want to practice it, as long as they do it peacefully. And that's not what would happen if Iran got a nuclear weapon. So that's what I would do about it. It's a really good question. Thank you for asking.
One of our most important weapons in the war against terrorism is our intelligence community. Our intelligence community before the Twin Towers was abysmal. We've made some strides since. Do you think it's sufficiently good now? And if not, what kind of steps are you going to make to improve it?
We've made strides in the time after 9/11, you're right. And it got significantly better in the 5 or 6 years after September 11th. Yeah. More resources were put in, more tools were given to them, and it made it a lot better. This president has now gone backwards on that. He's lessened the funding to the intelligence communities, and on top of it, he's taken away just this summer some of their tools. To take away from the National Security Agency the metadata program was an enormous mistake. Enormous mistake. And it was not just the president's mistake, by the way. The United States Congress went along with this, including two guys running for president, Senator Cruz and Senator Paul, voted to take tools away from our intelligence community, which could help them to connect the dots and intervene before something happened. Here's what I think needs to be done. And it needs to be done on both kind of the NSA, CIA side of things and the FBI side of things. We need to give them greater funding for more agents. Secondly, we need to make sure that we restore the NSA metadata program and we modernize all the tools they need, both in human intelligence and electronic intelligence, to be able to do what we need to do. Third, we need to go and talk to these tech companies in Silicon Valley, and we've got to talk to them about this encryption stuff that they're doing, which makes it more and more difficult for us to find out what's going on the internet and easier for terrorists to hide in dark corners of the internet and have conversations and plots and plans that we can't find. There's got to be a way we can accommodate their business interests with our national security interests. Those are the three things I would do right away. But remember this fourth thing. I'm the only one running for president who's actually done this stuff. I'm the only one who's prosecuted terrorists. I'm the only one who's worked with foreign intelligence. I'm the only one that's had to make decisions on whether to proceed or stop, how fast to go, when to move, when to hold back on trying to catch terrorists. When I get in there the first day, I don't need the owner's manual. I've done it. And when the FBI director comes in, he won't have to introduce himself. We've worked together before. He was the U.S. attorney in Manhattan when I was the U.S. attorney in New Jersey. He won't have to explain to me what actionable intelligence is. I know. And he won't ever have to wonder, nor will the director of the CIA or the NSA, as to whether or not I'll have the backs of the men and women who work there. We're asking them to work in a dark and dangerous place. And they need to know that they have the support of the political leaders of this country. Now, if they violate the law, they'll be prosecuted. Like anyone else in this country, again, rule of law, like anybody else in this country, whether you wear a badge or have an agent's shield, if you break the law, you break the law. But we need to have their backs because they have not broken the law. They have acted appropriately, and the political culture in this country has undercut them. And so those are the things that I would do.
Can I follow up?
Sure.
Everything that you've said, I agree with. There's one other thing that you haven't addressed, and that's the organization of the intelligence community.
Yeah.
We tend to have direct lines up, and the information does not cross over very well.
Yep.
And that's a historic thing that goes back to Pearl Harbor. What do you agree with me, and what will you do about it?
I think that I do agree with you, first off. I think in some respects it has gotten better through some of the structural changes that were made with the Director of National Intelligence and others. I think it's gotten a little bit better. But there is still, and you only really understand this if you've been in the intelligence community or law enforcement, there are still rivalries among these organizations.
Oh, yes.
Right? I mean, you know, when I was running the U.S. Attorney's Office, I was responsible for all of the different federal agencies, FBI, DEA, ATF, Secret Service, Marshal Service, Border Patrol, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, all of them. And I used to have to be the referee. They both wanted to do something. They both wanted this particular case. They wanted the statistic for that case. They wanted the credit for this. They wanted to stand closer to me during the press conference. All the rest of that stuff, right? It all still exists. Because I understand that I've dealt with it before, what I would demand of my FBI director, my CIA director, my NSA director, and my director of national intelligence is to say to them, guys, I got to tell you something. If I hear about this stuff going on, if I sense that it's going on, you're going to get fired. Your job is to make sure that everybody knows everything that's going on. Believe me, I'll give you all the credit. But first you got to do something worth getting credit for. And sharing that information is something worth getting credit for. I think that's the only way to do it. Because any structure you put up, you know this. It seems like you're very sophisticated in this stuff and may have done some of this in your career. So you know, any structure that gets put up can be worked around. Yeah. It's the human beings having the attitude that they don't want to work around it, that it's not to their advantage to work around it, that there's no incentive to work around it, and only the president can provide the appropriate incentive for those people not to act in that way. And I definitely know how to do that. I've done it as U.S. Attorney, and I'll do it as President of the United States. Thank you for bringing it up. Really good issue. Red jacket, sir.
I think folks here have no idea what the background is for a federal prosecutor. Some might interpret it as they're a lawyer. They have no idea the screening process that you have to go through or what you had to go through to be a federal prosecutor.
Yeah.
It's very much involved, and they go through your whole life. And you have to be one of the sharpest guys around, and that's what impresses me about you. The last presidential candidate rally like this that I went to was back in Franklin when Ronald Reagan was running for office in front of City Hall. That was over 50 years ago. And you have always impressed me. You impressed me even, I was hoping you'd get involved in the last election. And you did not. But this is the only one I'm going to, and I wish you the best of luck because you're in a Democratic state and you've gotten things done. And I'm originally from Massachusetts, which which is a
So you know my pain, yes.
a Republican to pull that off, that tells me what I already know. You're pretty sharp, but you're able to work with others to get the job done, and I'm just super impressed to be able to see you tonight.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that very much. We're going to give him the remaining 6 questions. Let me just say that, the role of being U.S. Attorney was simply the greatest job I've ever had in my life. And the reason it was is because every day, all you had to worry about was doing the right thing. And everybody you worked with every day was only worried about doing the right thing. I am sad to say that that's exactly the way politics works. You wish it did, but it doesn't. There's people with a lot of other motives. But every day, I got to work with a group of incredibly dedicated people who all they wanted to do was make the country safer, fairer, better, and you got to lead that group of people. It was enormous training. I ran one of the biggest offices in the country in New Jersey, and I got to do it for 7 years. And my wife kept asking me, like, are you going to leave and go get a job that makes some money? Isn't that what most people do? They just do this for a few years and then they leave and go. And I'm like, I just said to her, I just love this too much. I want to work and I stayed right until a month after Barack Obama was elected. I left on December 1st of 2008, and I started in January of 2002. So it was a month short of 7 full years. And I loved every minute of it, and I think it gave me enormous training for this job, at least as much, if not more, than being governor. So I think the experience would be put to great use in this job. I appreciate your observations, but I will also tell you that in the end, my job over the next 19 days here is to convince you. And most of you, are still making up your minds. So I'm glad your mind is made up. That is a very smart guy over there. Yeah. Yes, sir, in the back.
Oh, thank you. Hi, thanks for taking my question. Healthcare, put that hat on. I know we've only got a few minutes left, but do what you can with it. The Republican retreat was talking about putting new plans to replace the Affordable Care Act in place. What do you propose as a reasonable alternative to the Affordable Care Act?
Mine is fairly simple and direct. I think we need to get rid of the Affordable Care Act because I never thought it made sense for there to be one plan that covered all 50 states. The 50 states are incredibly different, incredibly different. Let's take our 2 states, New Jersey and New Hampshire. New Jersey and New Hampshire are roughly the same size from a landmass perspective. You have 1.3 million people here. I have 8.9 million people in New Jersey. What's that mean? A lot of the challenges to access here in New Hampshire regard distance. Distance to get to a place where there's a specialist that can deal with your particular problem. To get to a hospital that has the particular expertise to deal with your issue. That's not the issue in New Jersey. In New Jersey, you trip over a hospital every 4 miles, and they're everywhere. We got more hospitals than we know what to do with. And the fact is that our main access point problem is cost. Because everything's more expensive in New Jersey, and healthcare is even more expensive than the most expensive thing we have here. There's no way that there's going to be one nationwide system that's going to work for everybody and work well and effectively. So here's what I suggest we do. I think that you repeal Obamacare in 1 year after you take office. And in that 1 year, the law says that each state must come up with their own health care plan for their state. Let the governors and the state legislators develop the plan for New Hampshire. Not only do they know your state better, they know the problems and the issues better, they know what's available and what you can expand to or contract from, but you also have a much greater opportunity to have input. You have your state representatives, your state senators, your governor, who you can have real access and input to, much more than you can have to any member of Congress, or worse yet, to the Department of Health and Human Services. And so if you do that and you let each state have it, and not an option, but an obligation to come up with a plan, each plan will be developed for that individual state's needs, that's population. Look at the differences just in the population, too. We have the most ethnically diverse state in the country. That creates different types of health care challenges. Broadly different ethnicities often have different type of genetic and other predispositions for disease that make things go higher. Like in New Jersey, for instance, I don't know what causes this, but we have the highest rate of autism in the country. The highest rate for autism in the country. So that means that New Jerseyans are going to be particularly concerned about coverage under health insurance plans for autism and how that's going to be handled. That might be a much more important issue in New Jersey than it is in Hawaii, based upon just the genetics and the health concerns that come from those genetics of the people in my state versus another one. And the last reason why I'd go back to the states doing this is philosophical. You know, the 10th Amendment to the Constitution says if it's not listed here as a power of the federal government, that power reverts to the states. I've read it. Healthcare's nowhere in there. And the fact is, we got to start having some respect for the founders and how they set up this system and have more power for the states. I trust Jeb Bradley. I trust the folks in the state house to be able to make these judgments. And I trust that you're going to be able to get to him a heck of a lot easier than you're going to be able to get to the Secretary of HHS or to the members of Congress. And so you're going to be able to have influence. One of the things that I love, an old saying that I've heard about democracy, is that democracy isn't the kind of system that allows you to avoid every mistake, but it's the best system to help you fix the mistakes once they're made. And the closer we can keep those decisions to you, the better chance we have of those mistakes being corrected. And no matter what legislation they would pass in New Hampshire or I would pass in New Jersey, there will be mistakes that are going to be made. We'll learn that over time, and then you can help to make sure we know about it and then get it fixed. So that's the way I would go about doing it. I think we need to go to a state-based system. The national system for that broad a swath, I simply think won't work. And when you look at the promises of ACA, they haven't come through. If you like your doctor, you can keep them. If you like your health care plan, you can keep it. And costs are going to go down. Well, we know all three of those turned out to not be right. Now, the question is, was that in the design or the administration or both? I think we send this back to the states, let them figure it out, let them come up with it. I think that's the most equitable, fair, and ultimately effective way to get it done. And that's the way I would do it. This guy, young guy right here.
Thank you, Governor. I want to ask you about the Second Amendment, and I'm a firm believer in it, and I just want to know what you plan to do to protect it, and also give a little bit of your opinion about what the President talked about a couple weeks ago on the topic.
Well, listen, I think I alluded to this before. The President had no right to sign the executive orders that he signed. The Congress has legislated in that area, and you can't change the intent of Congress through executive orders. You have to go, if you want to change the intent of Congress, you got to go to Congress and get it changed. His problem is he's frustrated because he can't convince Congress. But let's remember something. He couldn't convince Congress when it was controlled by the Democrats. If this was such an important issue, he had a majority of Democrats in the House and 60 Democratic senators in 2009 and 2010. He did nothing on this issue. That means one of two things. Either he didn't care about it nearly as much as he says he cares about it now, or more likely, he couldn't convince his own party to do the things that he wants to do. See, it's a free ride for them right now because they know it's not going to happen, so they can say they're for it because they never actually have to vote on it. But man, if they ever actually vote on it and be on the record on it, I bet you'd see a lot of Democrats running in the other direction. So I think what he did was absolutely wrong. Here's my view on the Second Amendment. We are spending much too much time talking about law-abiding citizens and much too little time talking about criminals. Because the problems of gun violence in this country, in the main, are being executed on by criminals, people who there are already laws against them possessing guns. Anyone with a felony record in this country, it's illegal for them to own a handgun. It's the felon in possession laws at the federal level. I got this dopey bill on my desk in New Jersey that I vetoed that wanted to delineate that gang members, carjackers, and some other group of miscreants couldn't own guns. I'm like, and I vetoed it. And they're like, how could you possibly want gangbangers and carjackers to have guns? I said, they can't have guns already. There's a federal law against them having guns. So why do I have to have a state law when there's a federal law? Why? Because you want to put your name on the bill and then send it to your constituents and say, look what I did? Part of the job of being governor or being president is to stop the stupid stuff. It's to be the adult supervision in the room. Because I'm telling you, they do incredibly dumb stuff. So, to directly answer your question, I would appoint an attorney general who would understand that lessening gun violence in this country was a priority, and that the way to do it is the way we did it in the Bush administration. We started a program called Project Safe Neighborhoods. And what the Attorney General told us was he wanted us being out there aggressively making neighborhoods safer by arresting people, criminals with guns, and putting them in federal prison. And I remember Attorney General Ashcroft one time, they complained because the federal prison population was going up while crime was going down. And they said, how could the population be going up while crime's going down? And he's like, that's why. We got them when they're in jail. The people who are committing the crimes, we put them in jail. That's why the population's up and then crime goes down. Well, shouldn't you, with crime going down, shouldn't you have fewer people in jail? No. No, no, no. Not necessarily. Not when you're being aggressive. So we need to do that because, let me tell you, the folks that I prosecuted in those gun cases, and we did hundreds and hundreds of them in 7 years, they never went for a background check. They never respected a 48-hour waiting period. They stole the guns or they bought them on the black market. They'd scrape off the serial numbers. They'd use them. They'd dump them, and they'd get another one. And so this whole idea, and people have brought up to me, I had a woman very passionately last night at a town hall meeting in Derry say to me, you know, what about Newtown and what about Aurora, Colorado? And these are all awful crimes. But not one of them would have been changed by tightening gun laws because the folks who committed those crimes had their guns illegally. The disturbed young man in Newtown stole his mother's gun, which she had bought legally, killed her with it, and then went to that school, killed those children, and then killed himself. The problem that we have to deal with on that side of it is that we've got to just get much more aggressive about treating mental illness in this country. And, you know, it's really important. And part of that is removing stigma because people don't talk about it. They don't want to talk about it. They're ashamed. Family member has mental illness. Lots of folks are ashamed. They don't want to talk about it. As a result, they don't seek help. They don't know where to get help. We're adding money to our budget this year in New Jersey to make more mental health beds available in our state so that we can increase involuntary commitments. Give doctors and families the authority to involuntarily commit people who are either non-compliant with their medication or refuse to seek treatment but are speaking out violently. It's not just making us safer. We need to save those people from themselves because more times than not, they wind up killing themselves in this process too. And so this is an emotional issue because, man, you see a bunch of little children in elementary school get murdered in cold blood. There's not a person in this room, I am confident, that didn't shed a tear when you saw the picture of those kids come up on the screen. I can tell you I did. And as a parent, any of you in this room who are parents, there's not one of us, I don't think, who didn't put ourselves in those parents' shoes and think, how the heck could we have ever dealt with the idea of sending our little child off to school one morning and then getting a call that they had been murdered in their classroom? I've met some of these parents. They've come to see me in New Jersey. And they're incredibly brave. And I don't know that I could function the way they function after what they went through. So we have work to do. But the work does not include keeping guns away from law-abiding citizens and infringing on people's Second Amendment rights. I would remind you of one last thing. Going back to the founders, I don't think that the founders, you know, picked the order of the amendments out of a hat, right? I don't think they said, okay, which rights do we want to grant under the Bill of Rights? Let's throw them all in the hat. You know, and Madison and Jefferson, Franklin are sitting around and they go, okay, Ben, your turn. What's going to be the First Amendment? You went in there, oh, wow, look at this. Freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of association, freedom of religion, freedom from establishment of religion. Glad I picked this one out of the hat first. This is a biggie, right? It's the Second Amendment. I don't think they put it in that order by mistake. The founders believed that we should have a right to bear arms because they had a healthy fear of government. They had just lived under a tyrannical government in Great Britain. And they wanted to make sure that if our government got out of hand here, that you all were ready to fight, like they were ready to fight back then. And I don't think that's a right that we should take lightly. And so that's my position on it. And that's the kind of president I'll be if you give me the chance. All right? Okay.
Can you address your feeling about abortion and the funding of Planned Parenthood?
I am pro-life. And Unlike people in Congress who just talk about defunding Planned Parenthood, 6 years ago, as governor of New Jersey, I defunded Planned Parenthood, and I've defunded it every year that I've been governor. And I think they've sent it to me 8 times now, and I've vetoed it 8 times. So they haven't gotten the message yet. They'll send it to me again this year, and I'll veto it again. I think this is an incredibly important issue. And I want you all to know that I wasn't always pro-life. You know, when I was in my early 30s, late 20s, early 30s, I never thought about this issue. And the way I came around to this perspective was when Mary Pat was pregnant with our second child, who's now our oldest daughter, Sarah. And we were both working, and we happened to go to her doctor's appointment. We met at the doctor's appointment. And this doctor's appointment had to be right at 3 months. This Mary Pat wasn't even showing yet at this point. And so we went in, and he started to do the examination, and he took the Doppler, not the ultrasound, just the sound, the Doppler, and put it on her abdomen. And he moved it around, and all of a sudden, I could hear this heartbeat at 3 months as strong as could be. I'd never heard that before. I don't remember if I didn't go to those visits on our first child or what happened, but I had never heard that before. I got back in my car, and I was driving back to work, and I thought to myself, you know what? Under my position on abortion, I say that's not a life. I heard that heart beating. It's alive. And it changed my heart and changed my mind. And that was 21 years ago. That young lady will be 21 next month. You know, it changed hearts for me, and I think that's the way we have to try to change hearts with everybody, is for people to understand what's at stake here. And here's one other suggestion I would make. When I say I'm pro-life for the whole life. See, I think when we talk about pro-life, all too often we just focus on the 9 months in the womb. Now, those are 9 important months, but that's the easy part. They're in there. They're perfect. The hard part comes when they come out. That's when life gets really complicated and difficult. That's when it becomes much harder to be pro-life after they start making decisions on their own, right? And I'm serious about this because we don't talk enough about this in the pro-life movement, in my view. We narrow our concern to that 9 months. But let me tell you, the 16-year-old girl who's addicted to heroin laying on the floor of the county lockup tonight, her life is an individual gift from God. And it's just as precious as the life in the womb, and we should be just as committed and dedicated to saving it as we would be to saving the baby in the womb. The elderly person at end of life, their life is just as precious as that fetus inside the mother's womb, and no one should be deciding when that life ends other than God. And so we need to be pro-life for the whole life, and I think if we talked more that way, we could bring more people to our cause. When we narrow it just to those 9 months, the issue becomes even more emotional and more difficult. We broaden it longer. People say, well, yeah, okay, I agree with that. I believe in that. Yeah, I believe in that. And you start to bring people around. We need to bring converts around. And we need to also do it, one last thing, by not having our rhetoric be awfully harsh. You know, there are good people that we know who are pro-choice, who don't believe what we believe. And I was one of them at one time. If someone had come up to me and said, listen, you're pro-choice, you're going to hell because you're a baby killer, that would be kind of a conversation ender for me, right? Whatever else that person would say, valid or invalid, I'd probably go, no thanks. I'm not buying what you're selling. We need to tell people why our hearts feel the way they do. And I think if we do that, it'll be successful. And here's something to give you hope. Since Roe versus Wade, I am the first pro-life governor in the history of the state. And when I ran, everybody told me you could not win as a pro-life candidate in New Jersey, that New Jersey was too liberal and too pro-choice, and you could not win. And so you got to think about changing your position on this, Chris, because if you really want to be governor, you can't win. I said, well, man, this is what I feel and what I believe, and they're going to have to hear it, and if it means I don't win, I don't win. Well, I won. And then I governed as a pro-lifer, defunding Planned Parenthood, standing on the steps of the State House, speaking to the pro-life rallies in January, doing the things that you do as someone who believes in this cause. And I got reelected with 61% of the vote. So people want you to be honest with them. They want you to share what you really believe in your heart, even if they disagree with you, as long as you treat them with respect in return. And that's what I'll always do as president. I will give you my views that I believe in my heart, and I'll treat your views, even if they're different than mine, with respect in return. So thanks for asking the question. Sir, in the back.
I think you got me.
Hey, all
I
right.
enjoyed it.
Good night, everybody. I'll see you later. I can only do bad from here. So,
One question in
Sure.
all honesty. There are those that you're probably closer to than the rest of us. They're saying this isn't the right way to elect the president, that having New Hampshire first, like next election cycle, that New Hampshire is like in the middle or in the back. You're closer to being elected than any of us. Is this the right way to pick a president?
well, yeah, and here's why. Because, and I'll talk, I was going to talk a little bit of this about at the end, but I'll talk about it now. You get to do something that nobody else in the country gets to do. And you do it. Like, the thing that encouraged me the most about New Hampshire is that you show up. You were showing up in July. You were showing up in November. And now here we are in January, and it's cold out and all the rest of it, and you're still here. You're showing up and you're listening. What that means is that the quality of the candidate is ultimately what matters. Right now, I watched WMUR last night, okay, during the news. There were 12 commercials during the news. 1 by Honda and 11 from political candidates, okay? Hillary, Bernie, me, Jeb, Marco, Ted. I mean, we're all on there, right? I liked mine, yeah. Well, I liked mine best, of course, but I wish I would have had like TiVo at home. I could have rewound mine and watched it again. But if we go away from this system, that's all you're going to get. All you're going to get are those commercials and the pieces of mail and the robocalls. And all, that's all you're going to get. Because if we go to a system of like a regional type of primaries, multiple states on certain days, no one's going to have the time to do this. All you're going to get are the TV commercials. What Iowa and New Hampshire do very well is they take the time to truly get to know us. And you're doing a service for the American people. Because if you do it well, which you have all through your history, then you're going to leave this field from 12 where it is now, I guess, to 4 or 5. And those are the 4 or 5 people that the rest of the American people are now going to get to choose from. To who's going to be the Republican nominee for president. And so, yeah, I think it's exactly the right way to do it. Because otherwise, all that would matter is who had the most money to buy the most TV commercials. And that isn't necessarily, as we're finding out, the determining factor in who's going to win or lose. So, you know, I really think it's important for us to keep the system and the process the way it is. It's gone on for 100 years now here. I think it's stood the test of time. And I have to tell you the truth, I have very similar respect for the people of Iowa. I haven't spent as much time in Iowa as I've spent here, but I've spent a lot of time in Iowa. And those people take their responsibility very seriously also. And so I think we should leave Iowa and New Hampshire right where they are. First caucus and first primary. You've done a pretty good job so far, and that's where I would keep it.
Thank you, Governor Christie, and
it's going.
And I appreciate you calling on me. You have addressed eloquently a lot of the issues that Americans are facing right now, but you, not tonight anyways, and all throughout the debates, the one issue that I haven't heard a lot of conversation on, and one that does concern me, we're $19 trillion in debt as a country. If you were a family, if you were a company, or if you were any other kind of enterprise, your doors would have been shut years ago.
Yep.
A lot of that debt is held by people that are either strong competitors of ours or don't like us, but they know that at this point anyways, our currency is relatively safe. But I am very scared that we are facing economic Armageddon unless we deal with our balance sheet.
Yeah.
How would you deal with it?
Well, here's the way I deal with it. I'd start off by saying that you remember the old saying from Willie Sutton. They asked him, why do you rob banks? And he said, because that's where the money is. So now, if you want to solve the federal debt and deficit problems, how do you solve it? You go where the money is. 71 cents of every dollar that we spend right now are on entitlements and debt service. Think about that, everybody. 71 cents of every dollar we spend today are on entitlements and debt service. Yet you're right. No one's talking about it. I am the only one with a plan on entitlement reform. It's been asked 3 times in the debate. Who's been asked all 3 times? Me. Why? Because I'm the only one with a plan out there. You know, Marco got asked, if you remember the last debate, Maria Bartiromo on Fox Business News asked Marco Rubio, what would you do about entitlements? And he gave a 90-second answer on tax reform, right? Then Ted Cruz jumped in. So I'm like, okay, Ted's going to give his answer on entitlement reforms. And Ted spent 90 seconds telling everybody what was wrong with Marco's tax reform plan and why his was better. Then Marco wanted to answer back to Ted on his tax reform plan. And you might remember this part of the debate. I interrupted. I said, can I interrupt this debate on the floor of the United States Senate to actually answer the question that she asked on entitlements? And then Maria let me answer the question. If we don't get that part of it under control, we got no hope of turning it back. So I have a 12-point plan on my website on entitlement reform that's been scored by the Congressional Budget Office to save over $1 trillion over the next 10 years. Here's the good news. I'm not going over all 12 points tonight, okay? So take a deep breath, relax. It's getting a little warm in here. I don't want anybody to pass out. Then I'm going to go through 12 points on entitlement reform. But I'll go through 4 to give you a flavor for it. And then you can go on the website and look at the other 8. 2 on Social Security, 2 on Medicare. On Social Security, we got to raise the retirement age. And here's why, right? Here's why. We're all living longer. The average life expectancy of a woman today in America is 83. The average life expectancy of a man is 79. I see some of you ladies smiling. Right now, I want you to know that 10 years ago, you were 6 years ahead of us. Now you are only 4. We are gaining on you. And here's the really bad news. You're expecting a 4-year vacation from us at the end. You may not get it. We may catch you, and you'll be stuck with us the entire time. But remember, these programs were designed for when people live to their mid-60s. So we're now living, on average, 15 to 20 years longer than the program's intended. So I'd say this. We raised the retirement age 2 years, from 67 to 69, and we phase it in over 25 years. So it goes up 1 month a year for 25 years. Now, when I run against Hillary Clinton in the fall, she will run ads saying, Governor Christie's plan on Social Security throws grandma off the cliff. Right? In fact, I'm probably going to want you to voice that over. Just remember when she says it, that the cliff takes 25 years for grandma to land. That's a pretty high cliff, right? 25 years. So what it means for folks who are on Social Security now, it doesn't mean a thing to you. For the folks who are close to Social Security, it means a few months longer to wait. What it really means is for folks, not even my age, but my kids' age. That's who it's going to really affect, and that's who we need to make it more stable and solid for. Second thing we need to do is means test Social Security. This is another really unpopular idea, but it needs to be done, and here's why. We have a checkbook balancing problem. Okay, more money's going out than's coming in. And we add an additional problem to that. The government lied to you and stole. They stole from you. This money was supposed to go into a trust fund. Remember Al Gore in 2000 called it the lockbox. And right now you're sitting there saying to yourself, do I remember Al Gore saying that? Or do you remember the guy from Saturday Night Live who played Al Gore saying that? For purposes of this discussion, it doesn't matter. Just remember the lockbox. Here's what's in the lockbox. IOUs. They've taken the money we put in our FICA payroll tax and they're spending it now. And they've been spending it for years. And they put IOUs in return. So now you have a real problem. How are you going to balance the checkbook? There's only 2 ways, right? Either bring more money in or put less money out. Now, Hillary Clinton is going to advocate, and Bernie Sanders, for putting more money in. They're going to say, get at the rich people. Take the cap off Social Security tax and tax the payroll tax on everything everybody makes. Okay, it's an acceptable concept. I say, if you have $5 million saved, that's thrown off $200,000 in income in retirement, you've stopped working, you're getting $200,000 in retirement income, do you really need to get a Social Security check? I don't think so. It's not going to change your lifestyle one bit, and it's going to save the government an incredible amount of money. And here's why I prefer my plan to hers. We just said the government lied to you and stole from you, right? And everybody agrees to that. They took the money. So why would you give more money to the people who just stole from you under the promise that this time, I swear, I won't do it? I mean, right, it's laughable, but that's what she's advocating. Trust us this time. This would be like if they opened up a new bank here in Meredith and you went down and you deposited your money in the bank, and then a year later the bank went belly up and you lost some of your money. And then a year later, the guy who started that bank knocks on your front door. He says, hey, by the way, I'm opening up a new bank downtown, and I'd love to have your deposits. And you say, hey, aren't you the guy who ran the bank that went belly up when I lost my money? He goes, yeah, but I learned my lesson. Now, people in New Hampshire are really nice. I've learned that over the last 9 months, but I guarantee you, there's no way he's getting off your front porch with any of your money. So why would you give it to the government? And by the way, when we say for people who make over $200,000 a year in retirement have $5 million saved, that's the rich people too. It's not like I'm trying to save the rich people. It's just a matter of when are you going to ask for their sacrifice? Now, and then, or later. And if you do it now, you got to trust the government that they're not going to mess with that money in between. And let me just tell you something about government. If there's a choice between raising taxes, cutting spending, or, hold on, there's a pile of money over there that nobody seems to be watching here at the moment, and I could spend that on what I want to spend it on and not have to cut, not have to raise taxes or cut spending, what do you think they're going to do? Of course, right? Of course they're going to steal it. So why trust them with the money? You want to get at people who have been more successful, who don't really need it, because we want it there for the people who played by the rules, paid in, and who it makes the difference between rent and heat and food. We want to help those people. But there's only one of two ways to do it. Trust the government with more of your money, or take the sacrifice from people on the back end to say, you don't really need it, and let's have it be there for the people who get there. Do the same thing on Medicare, quickly. Raise the eligibility age 2 years, phase it in over 25. And for the people who have over $5 million saved, $200,000 in income, in retirement, instead of subsidizing your Medicare premium 75%, which is what we do now, subsidize it 10%. So you still get some subsidy, but not nearly as much as you do, because you don't. And we need to keep that subsidy high for the people who do need it, so they don't go to the emergency room every time they need to get health care, which costs us even more money than it would if we have them go through Medicare with the right kind of subsidy. So those are the 4 points. There's 8 more that deal with disability insurance and a number of other issues within there that you can go look at. And it's been scored by the Congressional Budget Office, not by me. It will save over $1 trillion over the next 10 years. That's the way you start to get a deficit. Now, you have to cut programs and spend less, and the point, you need economic growth beyond the 1.5 or 2 points. You need 3.5%, 4% growth in this country to bring more money into the Treasury without having to raise taxes. Get it on the right. Next person. Doing the same thing. So that's the way I would deal with the debt. You're right, there's not enough talk about it, but the reason there's not is because they won't talk about entitlements. Because if you don't talk about entitlements, you're talking about the 29%. How are you ever going to fix it if you ignore 71% of the spending? It's like you're running your business and you say, okay, well, here's 71% of our expenses that are completely off limits. Now, how do we balance the books? Can't do it. So it's that simple, but it's hard, and it's not popular. But I'm not running for prom king. I'm running for president of the United States, okay? So I want your respect. You can love me later, but I want your respect now, and I'm not going to pander to you. Now, they have told me that I can take one more question, which means I will take 2. The reason for that is that, yes, you can. Here you go, Jeb.
Thank you.
Jeb's chiming in.
Thank you. I just want to say why I've endorsed Governor Christie. And the question that you asked, sir, is one of the central reasons why I've endorsed him. It's easy to talk, and I've been in Washington, as all of you know, about entitlement reform. It's another thing to have the political courage to do it. And here's political courage. Governor Christie barely mentioned pension reform in New Jersey. In the bluest of blue states, a lot of union members, runaway pension costs, unfunded liabilities, he had the political courage to take on pension reform successfully. That's the kind of courage that we need to take on the entitlement reform question that you asked him. He has it. He's demonstrated it before in a way that no other candidate in this race has on either the Democrat or Republican side. So that's why I've endorsed him.
Thank you, brother. Sure, Congressman.
I want to echo and say the same thing. I went to North Conway and listened to you for 3 hours, and I agreed with you, and you have the guts to take on the issue, and nobody else has. That's why they don't talk about it.
Thank you, Congressman. Appreciate it. So we're going to take 2 more questions. Here's why. I want to show these staff people that I'm still the boss. Now, you think this is funny, but it really isn't, because you know what it's like to run for president? What it's like to run for president is you are surrounded every day by people that are all younger than you, and they tell you where to go and what to do every minute of the day. The only place that I am safe from the tyranny of the young is when I stand right in here and I have this microphone. They say, do this, do that. And I go, no, I got the microphone. I'm going to do what I want. So you've been a great group to talk to, so I'm going to take 2 more questions. I'm going to go to that guy back there because he raised his hand, and I gave him a hard time before when he yelled it out, and I was not going to let this end without him asking this question.
Thank you, Governor.
So what do you got for me?
Governor, I think it was a month ago where the frontrunner in the Republican Party said, we are going to ban all Muslims from coming into the United States. And immediately, Speaker Paul Ryan and a bunch of the GOP jumped on that and said, that's disgusting, that's not American. However, there were a few candidates in the GOP that said, well, we'll do religious tests. So where do you draw the line between security and religious freedom? Because I know a lot of Marines that are Muslims, and they're not the enemy.
Yeah, hey, listen, I said very clearly at the time, and I'll repeat it for you now, the idea of banning all Muslims for this country is ridiculous. And the reason it's ridiculous is because you don't need to do that to make America safe. We need to do the intelligence stuff that we talked about with this gentleman over here that helps us figure out who are the radical Islamic jihadists and who are the peaceful, hardworking Muslim Americans who are trying to raise their family, work their business or their job, and live their lives. Now, I have a lot of experience in this because New Jersey has the 2nd largest Muslim American community in the country. Only Michigan has more Muslim Americans than New Jersey. New Jersey is 2nd. So both as U.S. Attorney, imagine in the immediate aftermath of 9/11, when one of the tasks we were given by the Attorney General was to build bridges to the Muslim American community so they would work with us and cooperate with us to help keep us safe. So I had to work it then, and then as governor. What I've discovered over the course of time is nothing that shocks me, but that I think I need to say out loud, that the overwhelming majority of Muslim Americans in my state that I've met and worked with are really good people who love being Americans, who care about this country and love it. And many of them immigrated here because they wanted to raise their children here, because they wanted to have the opportunities that America provided. And they are absolutely mortified that people of their religion are committing these acts of violence against their fellow citizens. And so when Donald Trump said that, he was dead wrong, and he's dead wrong now. We need to stop the Muslim jihadists, and we can catch them through appropriate law enforcement and intelligence work and stop them, but not stop every person, because believe me, we need the Muslim Americans in this country to help us catch those people. The ones who are self-radicalized in mosques in this country, the ones who are self-radicalized over the internet, and talk to them about their plans. I don't want any Muslim American to think that I discount their cooperation with law enforcement and with the intelligence community. And so what I say is this is the difference between actually having done something and just talk. Okay, Donald's never done this. So maybe he doesn't know how wrong he is about it, but he is. I've done it. I did it for 7 years during the most dangerous time with Muslim Americans in this country's history after 9/11. And when you do it, you realize the difference, and you also realize how harmful that statement is. Now, he's walked it back a couple of different ways since then because he realizes, and sometimes I think he does that on purpose. You know, he says something that's so completely outrageous that everyone will cover him for 3 days, and then he spends 3 days walking it back and making it sound more reasonable. But in the end, I do not believe that this is a country that will ever have a religious test for who can be a citizen and who can't. In fact, our entire country was founded on the idea that we didn't like the fact that the British imposed a religion on everybody, and we wanted to practice our religion the way we wanted to. And if it's good for us, it's good for everybody else. All I care about are two things in the practice of your religion: that you practice it peacefully, and that you don't try to impose it through violence or coercion on anybody else. Beyond that, do what you want. Have your relationship with God that you want to have, that you're most comfortable with, that fills your spirit the most. And when you do that, and I met an atheist at one of these town hall meetings who said, "What about no religion?" I'm like, "Fine by you too, I don't care. I'm a Catholic, that's what I believe in, but you're an atheist? God love you, you know?" And he really liked that. So that's how I feel about it. I said it at the time. I'm happy to repeat it anytime I'm asked, because it's not only something that I believe in my heart, it's something I learned through the jobs that I've had. And that's the difference. And when you're making this decision, that's part of what you got to think about. Anyone can say anything. Ask them all how. How? How are you going to stop all Muslims from coming to this country? And what's the effect going to be on this country if you do? Wrong thing to do. Wrong thing. All right. Last question. This lady right up here.
Thank you for coming, Governor. And with your permission, this being the last question, I would actually like to hand this over to my mother, because I know she has a question that's been on her mind for a while.
Wow.
No, we addressed it already, Social Security.
Wow, the old bait and switch for Mom. How about that? That's all right, though. Okay.
I was going to originally, when I had my hand up, ask about Social Security, because obviously I'm receiving it.
Yeah.
And I don't want anything to happen to it.
Oh.
So, but you answered the question.
I did.
Previously, and my daughter was making sure she was taking care of Mom.
All right, good. So do you have another question you want to ask?
Actually, I have one. It's kind of education related.
Whatever you want.
So we have schools for becoming plumbers and becoming engineers. There's a big push on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And a lot of that leads into research, whether it's environmental, medical. What are your thoughts on refunding programs like NASA and space research?
I'm less high on that than I am on the National Science Foundation and the National Institutes of Health, right? So here's what's going on. This year, the National Institutes of Health budget went up 0.1%, as proposed by the president. National Science Foundation went down 4.3%. I think this is a twofer for us if we invest more in that research, and here's what it is. The first thing is that it keeps America on the cutting edge of all the different research and technology that's going on in the world that helps to make us the greatest economy in the world. We are no longer an economy that it performs well because we break our backs. It's because of what we do with our minds. And so we got to continue to invest in that. Second thing relates to healthcare. The 4 diseases that cost us over 75% of all of our spending at end of life are cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and Alzheimer's. And it spends over 75% of all the money we spend at end of life is on those 4 diseases. We need to invest a significant amount of money in partnership with the private sector to find treatments and cures for those 4 diseases. Now, we're making progress on cancer. We've made progress on heart disease. But we've made much less progress on diabetes and on Alzheimer's. And we have more, obviously, to do in cancer and heart disease as well. But think about if we invest that money now, we get 2 benefits. One, we not only don't have to spend that money at the end of life, but we get a better quality of life in between. I can't tell you how many people I've met who were your age talking to me about their parents in their early 60s who already have Alzheimer's and whose quality of life has been diminished significantly, and how their lives have been impacted by the need and desire that they have to take care of their mother or father. And while all that is noble, we want to try to stop it. And so before NASA, what I would want to put research money into is the National Institutes of Health and the National Science Foundation to be able to come up with that next round of cures and treatments in partnership with the pharmaceutical companies in this country, to come up with those treatments that will allow us to extend the quality of life and also to stop spending such an ungodly amount of money at end of life when quality of life is so bad, but you want to have treatment for your loved one, and it costs an inordinate amount of money. Let's spend that money up front to extend quality of life, not spend it on the back end just to extend life when its quality has been stripped away. So that's where I would do it. That's where I'd make the investment. Before I'd make it in NASA, I'd make it in those places. All right. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to say goodnight. But two things in saying goodnight. First is thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your consideration. Like I said in response to that gentleman's question on the first in the nation primary, I tell people in New Jersey all the time, if you're cynical about politics and democracy, come here and watch how all of you participate in this process. It gives you hope and faith that our democracy can really work, and I appreciate that very much. Second thing I want to tell you is to end with a story from one of my first town hall meetings here in New Hampshire. I had a gentleman come up to me after it was over, and he said to me, Governor, I really loved your presentation. I agreed with almost everything you said, and I want to thank you for being here. And I said, well, you're welcome, sir. And he goes, and I can't vote for you. And I said, well, why can't you vote for me? And he said, well, because you forgot to do something, and since you forgot to do this, I can't vote for you. He said, but I wish you the best of luck the rest of the way because you seem like a very nice guy. And he's like walked away. I said, no, we come back here. You're going to tell me what I forgot to do. Let's be fair. I mean, I'm new at this. I just started. Come on, help me out. So he came back and he said, well, you never asked for my vote. He said, I listened to your entire presentation. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. He said, I kept waiting for you to ask for the vote. You didn't ask for the vote. So I'm not giving it to you. And I said to him, okay, can I have your vote? And he goes, too late. I said, too late? It's August. You're not voting until February. You're too late. Give me another chance. Come on. And he said to me, all right, here's what I'll do. He said, I'm going to come back to another one of your town hall meetings sometime. You're not going to see me. I'm going to hide in the back. You're not going to know I'm there. And I'm going to see if you learned your lesson. And he said, if you learned your lesson and you actually asked for the vote, I'll think about it. He said, but if you don't, you're finished. And I said, okay, I guess that's fair. And he's an older guy. He looked to me like he was in his early to mid-80s. And he started to walk away, shook hands, and he started to walk away. And he took like 4 or 5 steps away from me. And then he turned back around over his shoulder and he went, and by the way, son, that's the way we do things in New Hampshire. So, out of fear, anxiety, and respect, I end by telling that story and asking for your vote. You got 19 days. 19 days from now, the polls are going to be closed, and the decision's going to be made. And the course of our country's history will begin to be changed by you. By you. I had a Republican in New Hampshire at a town hall meeting say to me, Governor, I feel powerless. And I said, oh, sit down. You're a Republican in New Hampshire. You are amongst the most powerful people in the world. You are going to determine the 4 or 5 people that is going to be the next president of the United States. And so when I ask you for your vote, I want to ask you for 2 other things to be selfish. I want your vote, but I want your trust and your confidence too. See, if I get your vote, I'm going to win. I'll get to the White House. But if I don't have your trust and your confidence once I get there, I have no chance of being a successful president. See, because I'm going to have to do things that are really difficult. And I'm going to have to make some decisions you may not like. If I have your trust and confidence, I have a shot to succeed. If I don't, I'll be a failure. And we cannot have another failed presidency. We can't. Our country is hungering for a successful presidency, and we need to give it to them, and I want to give it to you. But it's not a solo operation. You got to be part of it too, by giving the president your trust and your confidence. But I understand that as a candidate, you have to earn it, and as the president, you have to treasure it. And so I'm working hard to earn it, to not only earn your vote, but to earn your trust and your confidence too. It's 19 days to go. I've been here since April. And I'm going to keep coming back. And I was here in 2014 with Walt Havenstein. I was here in 2012 with Ovid LaMontagne. And I was here in 2010 with Kelly Ayotte. Okay, I've been here. You know who I am. It's deciding time now. Like I said to you before, it's the difference between showtime and game time. Showtime was the entertainment. The entertainment portion of the program is over. It's game time now. It's game time, and you want players on that field who know what your problems are, who believe in you, who believe in this country, and believe that with the right kind of strong leadership in the Oval Office, we can change our country. And we can change the course of history. And you know why I know that? Because it is the only thing that ever has. It's the only thing that ever has changed the course of history is strong leadership backed up by the people who are being led. That's what's changed our country's history. That's what's changed the world's history, for good and for bad. And so it's the only thing that ever will. So I'm asking you for the chance to do that. I am explicitly asking for your vote. I don't see him here, but you never know where he might be. And I really, from my heart, thank all of you for your time tonight and for your faith and confidence in our system to show up and be a part of it. So thank you all for coming tonight. I appreciate it very much.